The day began with a kind of brightness that promised everything would go smoothly. A clear spring morning in Denver. Cool air with just enough warmth to remind people that winter was finally gone. Emily Carter, 16 years old, walked beside her mother through the sliding glass doors of the airport. She wasn't dressed to stand out, just jeans, sneakers, and her favorite hoodie, but her wide, curious eyes caught everything. Her mother, tired from work and impatient with the crowd, tugged her suitcase behind her. "Come on, Em. We don't want to miss the flight." Emily nodded, though her attention kept drifting upward. She loved airports, not for the shops or the food courts, but for the way planes lifted off in the distance, heavy metal birds climbing skyward, as if the laws of gravity didn't apply to them. Most passengers shuffled through airports with glazed expressions, as though flying were just another chore. Not Emily. Every jet that thundered into the sky sparked a quiet thrill inside her. Flying wasn't just fascination, it was memory. Her father had been a hobby pilot before an illness claimed his life 2 years earlier. She could still remember those days in the little Cessna, the leather seat creaking under her as she sat beside him. His voice, patient and calm, explaining the horizon, the yoke, the delicate balance of wings against air. She had been only 12 then, but the lessons had stuck. Flying was freedom, and in her heart, she associated it with him. As they reached the security checkpoint, her mother gave a small sigh. "You and that faraway look again. You're thinking about your dad, aren't you?" Emily lowered her eyes. "A little," her mother softened. "He'd be glad you remember him that way. But today, let's just focus on getting there safely, all right? Your cousin's waiting for us." Emily smiled faintly, though the heaviness in her chest lingered. She knew her mother didn't understand the pull she felt toward the sky. To her mom, flying was simply transportation. To Emily, it was something almost sacred. They boarded flight 278 half an hour later, stepping into the narrow cabin with its smell of recycled air and coffee. The interior was the same as any other commercial jet, but to Emily, it felt like stepping into the unknown. She paused for a moment as they entered, catching sight of the cockpit door just before it shut. For the briefest instant, she glimpsed the panels glowing, buttons lit like a constellation in the dark. Her heart jumped. "Seats are this way," her mother reminded, nudging her down the aisle. They found their spots in row 14, near the wing. Emily pressed her forehead against the window, watching baggage handlers load luggage below. The aircraft's silver fuselage gleamed in the sun, the company logo bold and crisp. Everything about it seemed alive, this great machine that would lift them thousands of feet into the sky. Around her, passengers settled in with the usual mix of irritation and boredom. A businessman muttered into his phone, clearly negotiating something urgent. A young couple argued softly over who had packed the passports. A family of 4 shuffled their children into place with sighs and snacks. To most of them, this was just another 2-hour trip. To Emily, it was an event worth savoring. The engines whirred to life with a low rumble that vibrated through her seat. She smiled. That sound was like music, deep, powerful, steady. It reminded her of sitting in the Cessna, her father beside her, his hand guiding hers on the controls. "Feel the power, Em. Don't fight it, work with it." The flight attendants moved through the aisle, demonstrating safety procedures. Emily paid attention, though she noticed most passengers didn't. A few even chuckled quietly, dismissing the instructions as unnecessary. She didn't. Her father had taught her respect for the seriousness of flying. "Every flight deserves your full attention," he used to say. Soon, the aircraft began its slow taxi toward the runway. Emily's mother pulled out a magazine, already absorbed. Emily, however, was glued to the window. She felt the plane pause, engines growling louder, then suddenly roar to life. Her heart leapt as the ground blurred, the nose lifted, and the earth fell away beneath them. Takeoff always thrilled her. The rush of speed, the surge upward. The city shrank below, roads becoming thin lines, cars mere dots. Clouds loomed ahead like giant castles. Passengers adjusted their seatbelts, ordered drinks, or leaned back to nap. But Emily stayed alert, eyes fixed on the sky as though she were part of the crew. The flight settled into routine. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and confident, announcing their cruising altitude and arrival time. The passengers barely reacted, returning to their books and screens. To Emily, however, the captain's voice carried weight. It was the voice of authority, the voice of someone in command of a massive machine hurtling through the sky. She imagined what it must feel like to sit at the controls, hands steady, guiding hundreds of lives safely across the country. As the minutes passed, Emily allowed herself to relax. The drone of the engines became steady background noise. Her mother dozed off beside her. The businessman was typing furiously on his laptop. The couple, now reconciled, shared earbuds. Everything about the cabin said ordinary. And yet, Emily's mind wandered. She thought of her father's lessons again. How he had shown her the instrument panel, explaining altimeters and compasses. How he had let her take the controls for a few minutes, the Cessna wobbling slightly before she steadied it. The exhilaration of realizing she was flying. Not just a passenger, but a pilot, even for a short time. She pressed her forehead against the glass, watching the curve of the wing against the endless blue. One day, she whispered to herself, I'll be up there. For real. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, bouncing slightly. Gasps echoed through the cabin, but Emily hardly flinched. She knew turbulence was normal. She had felt it before in the small plane with her father, and she remembered his calm explanation. It's just air currents, Em. Nothing to fear. Keep steady. Trust your instruments. She smiled faintly at the memory, reassured even now. For most people, this flight was forgettable. Another 2 hours, another safe landing, another trip checked off. For Emily, it was a reminder. A reminder of the skies she longed to conquer, of the father who had given her that love, and of the quiet conviction growing inside her. She didn't know it yet, but Flight 278 would not be an ordinary journey. It would test everything she had learned, every ounce of courage she possessed. Before it was over, she would be asked to do the unthinkable. But for now, as the jet sailed smoothly through the clouds, she was simply a 16-year-old girl, lost in dreams of flight, unaware of the extraordinary destiny waiting just beyond the horizon. The first hour of Flight 278 passed without incident. The cabin was filled with the usual mixture of clinking ice and plastic cups, quiet chatter, and the steady hum of engines. Flight attendants rolled carts down the aisles, offering drinks and snacks. Some passengers leaned back to nap, others scrolled through their phones. To anyone glancing around, it was an ordinary flight, as uneventful as dozens before it. But ordinary can change in a heartbeat. In the cockpit, Captain Harris, a man with 20 years of experience, felt a sudden tightness in his chest. He brushed it off at first, adjusting his collar and taking a sip of water. His co-pilot, First Officer McAdams, noticed the slight wince, but said nothing. Pilots were human after all. Fatigue was part of the job. Still, something about the captain's pale face made McAdams uneasy. "Everything all right, Captain?" he asked. "Fine," Harris muttered, though his voice was hoarse. He straightened in his seat, eyes fixed on the instruments. But within minutes, the discomfort worsened. Pain shot down his left arm. His breathing turned ragged. He gripped the yoke with trembling hands, trying to steady himself, but the sweat beading on his forehead betrayed him. Then, without warning, his vision blurred. His body slumped forward, hitting the controls with a dull thud. "Captain!" McAdams shouted, reaching over to pull him back. But in the scramble, the co-pilot's headset tangled with the controls. He fumbled, trying to stabilize the plane, but fate struck a cruel second blow. McAdams's words slurred suddenly, his body convulsing. His hand clawed at the instrument panel as his eyes rolled back. He collapsed against the captain, unconscious. In the space of 30 seconds, both men at the helm of the aircraft were gone. The autopilot kept the jet level, the computer systems doing their job for now. But without human control, the passengers were unknowingly strapped into a machine flying blind. It was a flight attendant, returning to check on the crew, who first realized the nightmare unfolding. She knocked on the cockpit door, cheerful, then frowned when there was no answer. Regulations required them to verify the pilot's status, so she knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Her stomach tightened. She keyed in the emergency code, unlocking the reinforced door, and pushed it open. The sight before her froze her in place. Both pilots were slumped in their seats, motionless, the cockpit lights blinking urgently. The smell of sweat and something metallic filled the air. "Oh my God," she whispered, before fumbling for her radio. "Flight deck emergency." She shouted into her headset, her voice rising with panic. "Both pilots are unresponsive." The other attendants gasped, rushing forward. One tried shaking the captain. Another checked the co-pilot's pulse. Both men were alive, but unconscious, their breathing shallow and irregular. Meanwhile, the passengers sensed something was wrong. The normal rhythm of the flight had broken. The attendants' hurried movements, their pale faces, the clipped, frantic whispers, it all spread like electricity through the cabin. "What's happening?" A man called from row 7. "Is everything all right?" Another asked, her voice trembling. The attendant stepped out of the cockpit, eyes wide. She hesitated, torn between honesty and calm. Then she took a breath and addressed them. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical emergency in the cockpit. Both pilots are incapacitated." The words hit like a thunderclap. A wave of gasps swept through the rows. Some passengers froze in shock, others burst into frantic chatter. The businessman slammed his laptop shut, muttering curses. The couple clutched each other's hands. A child began to cry. One woman shouted, "But who's flying the plane?" Silence followed. The question hung in the air like a guillotine. The attendant's throat tightened. She forced herself to stay steady. "The autopilot is engaged for now. We are contacting ground control. We need to know. Does anyone here have flying experience?" The request rippled through the cabin. Heads turned, whispers filled the space. People looked at one another, hoping, praying that someone would speak up. A man in row 3 raised his hand half-heartedly. "I've flown. In video games," he said, earning a few nervous chuckles. Another man muttered, "I once took a flying lesson. 20 years ago." But even he shook his head quickly, unwilling to shoulder such a responsibility. The attendant's eyes scanned the room desperately. That was when she saw Emily. The girl sat stiffly by the window, her face pale but determined. She hadn't laughed, hadn't dismissed the question. Instead, she looked as though she were debating something with herself, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Emily's heart raced. Her father's voice filled her mind lessons in the small Cessna, the feel of the controls under her hands, the way he made her repeat the steps until they became instinct. But this wasn't a Cessna. This was a massive passenger jet with lives depending on it. Could she really step forward? Her mother noticed her expression. "Emily," she whispered sharply, "don't even think about it." But Emily couldn't ignore the plea in the attendant's voice, the terror in the passenger's eyes. Slowly, she raised her hand. I've flown before," she said, her voice soft but steady enough to silence the chatter around her. Every head turned toward the teenager in row 14. "You've flown?" The attendant repeated, incredulous. Not a jet," Emily admitted, her cheeks flushing. "But I've flown small planes. With my dad. I know the basics." The cabin fell silent. The absurdity of it struck everyone at once. A 16-year-old girl? Flying a passenger plane? Yet no one else was standing. No one else had raised their hand. The attendant's eyes flickered with both hope and desperation. "Come with me," she said. Emily's mother grabbed her arm. "No, she's just a child. You can't put this on her." But Emily pulled free, her legs trembling as she stood. "Mom, I have to try." Every gaze followed her as she made her way down the aisle, a teenager walking toward the cockpit as if heading into the lion's den. Some passengers whispered prayers, others stared in stunned silence. The businessman muttered, "This is insane," but no one stopped her. When Emily reached the cockpit door, her pulse was a drumbeat in her ears. She looked once over her shoulder, meeting the eyes of dozens of strangers who were suddenly depending on her. Then she stepped inside, into the chaos of blinking lights, motionless pilots, and a machine that needed a steady hand. It was the moment ordinary became extraordinary. The cockpit was smaller than Emily imagined. The air was stifling, heavy with the mingled sense of sweat, metal, and fear. Warning lights flickered across the control panels, casting red glows against the faces of the unconscious pilots. Captain Harris slumped to one side, lips pale, chest rising unevenly. First Officer McAdams was sprawled against his harness, head tilted at an unnatural angle. Emily froze in the doorway. For a moment, she felt like an intruder in a forbidden place, a child standing on holy ground. Every screen, every switch seemed alive, intimidating in its complexity. This was no Cessna. This was a giant, and she was staring straight into its heart. The flight attendant who had led her here touched her shoulder. "You said you've flown before?" Her voice cracked with desperation. Emily swallowed hard. "Not this, just a small plane. With my dad." The attendant glanced back at the slumped men. "It's more than anyone else has. Can you sit down? Just try?" Her mother's voice carried from the aisle outside, sharp and panicked. "She's a child. You can't make her do this." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to turn back, to hide under her blanket like she was still 12, but she remembered the look in those passengers' eyes, the raw terror when the attendant announced the truth. Nobody else had stepped forward. No one else even dared. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "When fear tells you to run, courage whispers, stay." She moved forward. Slowly, carefully, she lowered herself into the captain's seat. The leather was cracked, the yoke cold beneath her trembling fingers. It felt impossibly heavy, like gripping the weight of the entire world. The attendant handed her a headset, fumbling with the wires. "Put this on. I'll patch you through." Emily slipped it over her ears. Static hissed. Then a voice, calm and firm, broke through. "Flight 278. This is Denver Center. Do you copy? Please respond." Her mouth went dry. She forced herself to press the transmit button. This is Emily Carter. The pilots, they're both unconscious. I don't know what to do." The silence that followed felt eternal. Then the controller spoke again, his tone shifting, urgent but steady. "Emily, thank you for responding. You're doing well. Listen to me carefully. Are you in the captain's seat?" "Yes," she whispered. "Good. First, take a deep breath. The autopilot should be holding you steady. Do not panic. We're going to guide you step by step. You are not alone. His words anchored her, a lifeline in the storm. She inhaled shakily, trying to still the tremors in her hands. Behind her, the flight attendant leaned close. "They're with you, Emily. Just listen to them." The controller's voice returned. "Can you confirm? Are the aircraft's wings level?" Emily scanned the artificial horizon, remembering her father's lessons. A small airplane icon floated on the display. It wavered slightly, but it was centered. "Yes," she said, steadier this time. "Level. Excellent. That means autopilot is engaged. That's buying us time." Emily exhaled slowly. Time, she had time. But for how long? She glanced at the unconscious pilots again, a chill running down her spine. What if they don't wake up? The controller continued, calm and methodical. "Emily, I need you to do something. Place your right hand on the yoke, gently. Don't force it. Just feel it." She obeyed, gripping the controls. They were heavier than she expected, the resistance stronger than her Cessna memories. Her pulse quickened. "Good. Now, rest your feet on the rudder pedals. Don't press yet, just be ready." She shifted, sneakers finding the pedals on the floor. For the first time, she felt the plane respond faintly to her touch, like a giant beast stirring beneath her. The controller spoke again. "Emily, I want you to know this. You can do this. We will not let you down. You have one job right now: stay calm and follow instructions. Can you do that for me?" She closed her eyes briefly, her father's face flashing in her mind. His steady gaze, his patient smile. "Trust yourself, Em." "Yes," she whispered. Louder this time. "Yes, I'll try." Behind her, another attendant poked her head in. "The passengers are panicking. What should we tell them?" Emily hesitated, then spoke without thinking. "Tell them. Tell them I'm flying the plane, and that I won't let them down." The words surprised her even as they left her lips, but they gave the attendants something to cling to. Back in the cabin, the announcement spread like wildfire. "A teenage girl is flying the plane." Gasps, disbelief, prayers. Some passengers buried their faces in their hands. Others stared in stunned silence. The businessman muttered angrily, but even he couldn't deny the truth. Nobody else had stepped forward. Emily didn't hear their reactions. She was focused on the controller's voice. "Emily, here's what's happening. We'll vector you toward an airport with a long runway. You'll need to control descent and speed. Don't worry about the technical jargon. I'll simplify everything for you." Her throat tightened. "Okay, but what if I mess up?" "You won't," the controller said firmly. "You'll make mistakes, but we'll correct them. What matters is that you're here, trying. That already makes you the bravest pilot in the sky today." For a fleeting moment, Emily almost smiled. The fear didn't vanish, but it shifted less of a crushing weight, more of a fire pushing her forward. The attendant squeezed her shoulder. "We believe in you." Emily looked at the lifeless pilots one more time. A shiver passed through her, but she set her jaw. They couldn't fly. She could. Or at least, she had to try. She tightened her grip on the yoke, eyes fixed on the glowing horizon display. Her father's words returned like a prayer. Focus on what you know. Trust the horizon. And never, ever give up. She wasn't just Emily Carter, the quiet 16-year-old in row 14 anymore. She was the only thing standing between 150 souls and disaster. And for the first time in her life, she felt herself rise to meet the impossible. The cockpit felt like another world. As Emily settled into the captain's seat, the chaos of the cabin faded behind her. It was just her, the glowing panels, the dead weight of two unconscious men, and the terrifying responsibility that now rested in her shaking hands. The silence wasn't silence at all. It buzzed with warning alarms, the faint hiss of the radio, the whir of machinery. The jet itself seemed alive, breathing beneath her, waiting to see what she would do. Her hands trembled on the yoke. The leather was slick under her palms, worn from thousands of hours of use. It didn't feel like the familiar stick of her father's little Cessna. It felt monumental, a control built to steer a Leviathan. The air traffic controller's calm voice cut through her panic. "Emily, listen to me. You're doing great. First thing, confirm for May the autopilot is engaged. Look at the center console. Do you see a green light labeled AP?" Emily scanned the sea of buttons. Her breath hitched. There were so many red, green, amber, each one blinking like stars in an unfamiliar sky. She swallowed, searching, until her eyes locked onto the letters. "Yes, I see it. It's green. Good. That means the plane is flying itself for now. That's buying us precious minutes. Now, we need to check your altitude. Look at the gauge with numbers in hundreds. Should read about 350. Emily's eyes darted to the altimeter, numbers ticking faintly. She remembered her father's lesson. This tells you how high you are. Simple as that. Her voice steadied as she said, "We're at 35,000. Excellent," the controller replied. "That's perfect. You're on course, stable. Now take a deep breath." Emily obeyed. The air felt thin in her lungs, but she forced it in, then out. She had to calm down. If she panicked, everyone would pay the price. Behind her, one of the flight attendants leaned against the doorway, wide-eyed. "What do we tell the passengers?" She whispered. The controller must have overheard through the open line. "Tell them help is on the way. Emily's not alone. She has a team on the ground guiding her." The attendant nodded and slipped out, leaving Emily once again surrounded by blinking lights and silence. The controller spoke again. "Emily, my name is Jack. I've been an air traffic controller for 25 years. I'm not going to let you fail. Do you understand?" Her throat tightened. She barely managed. "Okay, good. Now we're going to take this step by step. I'll tell you exactly what to do. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to follow instructions. You can do that, right?" "Yes," she whispered. "I can. Atta girl. That's what I need to hear." She adjusted in her seat, glancing once at the unconscious pilots. The sight made her stomach twist. Captain Harris's hand dangled limp, a wedding band catching the glow of the instruments. First Officer Macadams's chest rose shallowly, his headset slipping down his neck. They looked so fragile, so human. These were the men who were supposed to protect the passengers. Now, somehow, that job was hers. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She couldn't shake the weight pressing down on her. 150 lives. My mom. All of them. Me. The voice in her headset broke her spiral. "Emily, look out the front window. Do you see the horizon line?" She lifted her gaze. Beyond the glass, the sky stretched in layers. Endless blue above, faint white haze where earth met sky. "Yes," she said. "Good. Always keep that horizon in mind. If you get confused, focus on that line. That's your anchor. That's what keeps you level." Her heart clenched. Her father had said almost the same words years ago. "Trust the horizon, Em. It never lies." She nodded instinctively, though Jack couldn't see her. "Okay, horizon. That's it," Jack encouraged. "Now, hands on the yoke. Rest them lightly. Feel the weight, but don't fight it. Just connect with the plane." Her fingers curled around the yoke. The aircraft hummed beneath her touch, alive, sensitive. She could feel tiny vibrations, the faint resistance of air rushing past. It wasn't like the simulator she once tried. This was real. Her stomach churned, but she held steady. "I've got it. Excellent. Now, I'm going to need you to disengage autopilot in a few minutes when we begin descent. That'll be the real test. But not yet. For now, you're just getting familiar. Understand?" "Yes," she said quickly. Relief washed over her. She didn't have to take full control yet. She had time. Behind her, the flight attendant returned, whispering, "They're calming down a little. Some are praying. Some are crying. But they know you're up here." Emily's throat tightened. She couldn't imagine the fear pulsing through the cabin. She tried not to think about their faces, the mother with 2 children, the elderly man who had smiled kindly at her during boarding, the couple still holding hands. They were all depending on her. She shifted again in her seat, forcing her back straight. The weight was crushing, but she couldn't let it break her. Jack's voice came again. "Emily, you're doing beautifully. I'm handing you off to a specialist team pilots here on the ground who will guide you into landing. But I'll stay with you too. You won't lose me." The headset clicked, and another voice came through, calm, authoritative, with the practiced ease of a veteran pilot. "Hello, Emily. This is Captain Reeves, retired airline pilot. I've landed hundreds of these birds. And you're about to do the same. You ready?" Her chest seized. Ready? How could anyone be ready for this? But something steadier answered for her. "Yes, I'm ready." "Good. First thing, Emily, flying this jet is not as different from your dad's small plane as you think. It's bigger, heavier, slower to respond, but the principles are the same. Horizon, throttle, yoke, pedals. Keep those 4 in mind." Her heart jolted. Her father had said almost the same thing. Doesn't matter if it's a toy or a jumbo jet, the sky listens to the same rules. Tears prickled her eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't break now. Captain Reeves continued, "In a little while, you'll need to descend. That means reducing altitude and slowing down. I'll talk you through it. But for now, just breathe. Emily, you've got the hardest part behind you stepping into that seat." Emily exhaled shakily. He was right. She was here. She hadn't run. She hadn't hidden. Her fingers tightened on the yoke, less shaky now. She stared at the horizon line, remembering every lesson, every moment with her father in the cockpit of the little Cessna. She was terrified. But she was not helpless. For the first time since the nightmare began, Emily allowed herself to believe, "I might actually be able to do this." The first moment she disengaged autopilot, Emily felt the weight of the plane lurch into her hands. The yoke pulled, heavy and unyielding, like a living creature resisting her control. "Easy," Captain Reeves' voice guided through the headset. "Gentle touch, Emily. Don't fight her. Think of it like steering a boat, slow, steady corrections." Her palms were slick with sweat. She tried to breathe evenly, but her chest tightened as the jet dipped slightly to the right. Gasps echoed faintly from the cabin behind her. She yanked the yoke left, overcorrecting, and the massive aircraft tilted hard. Drinks spilled, people screamed. Too much. Reeves barked, but his voice remained calm. "Ease it back, gentle hands. Remember, she's heavy. She lags behind your input. Don't chase the wobble." Emily forced herself to relax her grip. The plane steadied, wings leveling. For a moment, silence returned, only the hum of engines and the rush of air. Her heart hammered. "I almost flipped them." "You're fine," Reeves reassured. "Every pilot overcorrects the first time. Settle in. You're in control now." But the calm didn't last. A patch of turbulence struck like an invisible fist. The jet jolted upward, then dropped sharply, rattling every seat. The overhead bins rattled, and terrified shouts erupted from the cabin. Emily's stomach lurched as though the floor had fallen out from under her. "Hold her steady," Reeves commanded. Emily fought the controls, but her hands shook violently. The yoke trembled with each buffeting gust. She remembered her father's calm voice years ago, during a similar moment in the Cessna. "It's just air. The sky's currents. Don't wrestle them, ride them. Let your hands feel, not force." She swallowed the panic rising in her throat and loosened her grip. The plane dipped again, but instead of jerking the yoke, she nudged it gently, tiny corrections. The turbulence continued to toss them, but gradually the aircraft steadied into smoother air. "That's it," Reeves encouraged. "Perfect. You rode it out." Her breath came fast, shallow. She wanted to cry, to scream, to run, but she didn't. She couldn't. Behind her, the intercom buzzed. A flight attendant's shaky voice came through. "Emily, passengers are frightened. Some are panicking. Can we tell them anything?" Emily hesitated. The truth was terrifying. But she remembered the faces she'd seen boarding, the hopeful smiles, the casual chatter. They needed more than silence. She pressed the button. "This is Emily. I'm at the controls. We hit turbulence, but we're steady now. I'm not going to give up on you. We'll land safely. I promise." There was no applause this time, just a hush that spread across the cabin. Fear remained, but so did a fragile hope. Reeves' voice returned. "Well said, Emily. Now focus forward. We need to prepare for descent soon." The words tightened her stomach. Descent meant losing altitude, slowing down, guiding the jet toward Earth. It meant facing the most dangerous part of all landing. "Emily, listen closely," Reeves continued. "Reduce throttle slightly, those two levers in the center console. Move them back just a hair." Her hands shook as she reached for the throttles. The hum of the engines lowered, the vibration beneath her feet changing pitch. "Good. Now ease the nose down just a touch. Watch the altimeter." She pulled gently on the yoke. The plane responded slowly, the numbers on the altimeter beginning to drop. 34,500. 34,000. 33,500. Her stomach tightened as the Earth inched closer. "You're descending beautifully," Reeves assured her. "Keep her stable. Watch your speed." Emily glanced at the airspeed indicator, another cluster of numbers she half understood. It edged higher as they descended. "Too fast," Reeves warned. "Ease back on the throttle a little more." She adjusted, and the needle steadied. Relief trickled in, but it didn't last. Another jolt of turbulence sent the plane lurching again, this time harder. Passengers screamed. The intercom crackled with voices praying, crying, calling loved ones. Emily's vision blurred with tears. Her hands clenched the yoke so tightly, her knuckles ached. I can't do this," she cried. "You can," Reeves said firmly. "You are. Look at the horizon, Emily. What do you see?" Through her tears, she blinked at the windshield. The horizon line glowed steady against the chaos, dividing sky from earth. "I see it," she whispered. "Then trust it. Forget the noise, the screams, the alarms. Just you and the horizon. Keep it steady, and you'll keep them safe." Her breath shuddered. She focused on the line, blocking everything else out. Slowly, the plane leveled again. The panic in her chest dulled, replaced by fragile determination. The turbulence eased. The cabin quieted to sobs and murmurs. "You're doing it," Reeves said softly. "That was textbook flying, Emily. I've trained grown men who didn't recover like that. Be proud of yourself." But pride was drowned by exhaustion. Her arms ached, her body trembling from adrenaline. And yet, she knew it wasn't over. It was only beginning. Minutes dragged like hours. Every second was a battle fighting the weight of the plane. the fear clawing at her mind, the pressure of countless lives resting on her. She thought of her mother in row 14, probably weeping, probably praying. She thought of her father, gone, but somehow here with her. And she thought of the passenger strangers, yet now hers to protect. Finally, Reeves' voice returned, more urgent now. Emily, we're approaching the point of no return. It's time to prepare for final approach. Her heart skipped. Final approach. The runway. The landing. She wanted to scream that she wasn't ready, that she was just 16, that she belonged in school, not in the cockpit of a passenger jet. But the words caught in her throat. She couldn't say them. Because ready or not, there was no one else. She tightened her grip on the yoke, eyes locked on the horizon. "Tell me what to do," she whispered. And with that, the struggle wasn't over, but she had chosen to face it head-on. The runway lights were still invisible, hidden far below the clouds, but Emily could feel the descent pulling them closer to Earth. The altimeter ticked steadily downward 20,000 feet, then 18,000, then 15,000. Each drop was a drumbeat inside her chest. Captain Reeves' calm voice filled the headset. "Emily, we're going to set up for final approach. This is the most critical phase. From here on out, every move matters." Her throat tightened. She shifted in the captain's seat, the seatbelt pressing against her ribs. Her arms ached from gripping the yoke, her legs trembling against the rudder pedals. But her eyes never left the horizon. "First," Reeves said, "you need to slow us down for landing. Reach for the flap lever. It's to your right, labeled flaps." Her hand darted to the console. Rows of switches blurred, her panic threatening to overwhelm her. Then she spotted it. Flaps. She pulled gently. A deep mechanical hum rumbled as the massive wings adjusted, extending their surfaces to create drag. The nose of the plane dipped slightly. "Good," Reeves affirmed. "You'll feel her get heavier in the controls. That's normal. Now bring the throttles back a little more. We need to lose speed." Emily pulled the levers back. The engine's roar softened to a steadier hum. The airspeed indicator needle slid downward. She exhaled shakily. "Speed's dropping. Perfect. Keep her steady. We want you around 180 knots on final." Emily didn't know what that truly meant, but she trusted Reeves. She had to. The radio crackled, and another voice broke in the air traffic controller. "Jack, still on standby. Emily, you're cleared to land at runway 27. Winds coming in at 12 knots from the west. We're keeping every other plane out of your airspace. You've got the sky all to yourself." The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they made her realize the weight of the moment. The entire sky cleared just for her, because hundreds of lives depended on whether she could make it to the ground in one piece. Her chest tightened. She whispered, almost to herself, "I can't mess this up." "You won't," Reeves said firmly. "Stay with me. We'll do this together." The cloud layer loomed ahead, thick and gray. Her pulse spiked. Once they entered it, she'd lose all visual reference, only instruments would guide her. "Emily," Reeves said, sensing her fear, "remember your anchor, the horizon, and your instruments. Trust them. Don't chase shadows. Let them guide you." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Okay." The nose of the jet dipped into the clouds. The world outside vanished in an instant, swallowed by swirling gray. The cockpit dimmed, bathed only in the eerie glow of the instrument panel. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the cabin behind her. Some passengers prayed aloud. Others clutched armrests until their knuckles turned white. Emily's breath quickened. She gripped the yoke tighter, fighting the urge to panic. "Altitude check," Reeves said calmly. 10,000, she answered, eyes flicking to the gauge. "Good. Landing gear next lever on the left, marked gear. Her trembling hand reached for the gear handle and pulled. A heavy clunk echoed beneath them, followed by the whir of hydraulics. Then 3 green lights lit up on the panel. 3 green, Reeves confirmed. Gears down. You're setting up perfectly, Emily. The plane jolted suddenly, a pocket of turbulence inside the clouds. Her stomach dropped. She overcorrected, the wings tilting. The cabin erupted with fresh screams. Steady, gentle hands, Reeves coached. Don't let the panic pull you around. Small corrections, that's all. Emily forced her breathing slower. She eased the yoke back, then right. The wings leveled. The screams behind her softened into terrified silence. Her eyes darted to the altimeter again. 7,000 feet, she whispered. Perfect. You're on glide path. Just keep it steady. Minutes stretched into eternity as they sank through the thick gray. Sweat trickled down Emily's forehead, dripping into her eyes. She blinked it away, refusing to let go of the controls even for a second. Then, suddenly, the gray broke. Her breath caught. Below them stretched a patchwork of city lights, glowing like scattered jewels against the dark earth. Roads glimmered, headlights moved like tiny fireflies, rivers reflected the moonlight. And there straight ahead, a pair of glowing parallel lines cut through the darkness. The runway, she whispered. That's it, Reeves confirmed. His voice carried pride now. You've got eyes on the prize. The sight of the runway both steadied and terrified her. It was real now. No simulator, no dream. A strip of concrete waiting to test whether she lived or died. Keep her nose lined up, Reeves instructed. See those lights? White means you're too high. Red means too low. Too red, too white, that's perfect. Emily squinted, heart pounding. The runway approach lights flickered in the distance. Too red, too white. I've got it, she said. Atta girl. Hold it there. Small corrections only. Her hands trembled, but she adjusted with tiny movements. The jet obeyed. The runway crept closer, growing larger in the windshield. Speed check, Reeves said. Emily glanced at the dial. 180. Perfect. You're right where you need to be. Emily, you're flying final approach like a pro. Tears pricked her eyes. She couldn't believe it. She was really doing this. But as the runway loomed closer, the weight of the moment grew unbearable. The passengers' lives pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. Her arms ached, her chest heaved, her vision blurred with sweat and tears. Her voice broke as she whispered, I don't know if I can land it. Reeves' tone softened, steady and unshakable. Emily, you already are. Look out the window. See that runway? You're lined up. You're descending on profile. You're ready. And when the wheels touch, I want you to remember something. Every single soul on this plane is alive because of you. The words hit her like a surge of electricity. She tightened her grip on the yoke, eyes fixed on the glowing runway. She wouldn't let go. Not now. The altimeter dropped 2,000 feet. Then 1,500. Then 1,000. Her breath quickened. She heard whispers and gasps behind her, the cabin bracing. Focus, Emily, Reeves urged. This is it. You're bringing them home. At 500 feet, the runway lights blazed clear in her vision. At 200 feet, the engine's hum filled her chest like a heartbeat. At 100 feet, her hands trembled but held steady. Ease back, Reeves instructed. Just a little. Flare gently when I say. The ground rushed upward. Her pulse thundered in her ears. And as the runway filled the windshield, Emily knew there was no turning back. The runway rushed toward them like a silver river in the night, its edges lined with glowing lights that shimmered against the dark earth. Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. Her hands clung to the yoke, knuckles pale, arms trembling from exhaustion. Every nerve screamed at her to let go, to escape the crushing responsibility pressing down on her 16-year-old shoulders. But there was no escape. Only forward. 200 feet. Captain Reeves' voice came steady through the headset. Eyes on the end of the runway. Don't stare at the ground rushing by, look where you want to go. Her vision locked on the far end of the strip, a beacon in the darkness. 100 feet, Reeves said. Ease back just a little. Hold her steady. Emily swallowed hard. Her hand tightened. She pulled back slightly on the yoke. The nose lifted. The plane seemed to float, suspended between sky and earth. 70 feet. Almost there. Just ride it in. Don't rush it. The engines roared in her chest. The ground surged closer. The lights blurred from her tears. 30 feet, Reeves commanded. Flare now gently, Emily. Gently. She pulled back on the yoke. For one terrifying heartbeat, she thought the jet wouldn't respond, that it would smash nose first into the ground, scattering fire and wreckage across the runway. Then she felt it. The nose lifted. The descent slowed. The great machine glided, skimming just above the tarmac. 10 feet, Reeves said. His voice dropped low, intense. Hold it steady. Hold it. The wheels touched. A thunderous jolt shook the cabin, rattling every bone in Emily's body. The tires screamed against the asphalt, smoke rising in thin plumes. The wings flexed, the fuselage trembled. We're down, Reeves shouted. But Emily's job wasn't finished. The jet hurtled forward at deadly speed. Reverse thrust. Reeves barked. Levers forward, then back. Emily's shaking hands obeyed. She shoved the throttles forward, then pulled them back. The engines roared with a new pitch, blasting air forward. The force slammed her against the seatbelt. The plane slowed, but still barreled down the runway, lights streaking past the windows. Brakes now, Reeves ordered. Her feet pressed down on the pedals. The massive aircraft groaned, the vibrations rattling her teeth. Passengers screamed, cried, prayed. The overhead bins rattled. Drinks splashed onto the floor. Emily clenched her teeth, refusing to blink. The end of the runway loomed. Steady pressure, Reeves guided. Not too hard, or you'll skid. Her calves burned. She held the pedals firm, breath locked in her chest. The runway lights whipped past slower. Slower, slower. And then silence. The jet shuddered to a crawl, rolling gently down the final stretch. The engines eased to a dull hum. The lights outside no longer streaked. They glowed, still and steady. Emily's entire body slumped forward, every ounce of strength drained. A sob tore from her chest, shaking her shoulders. She couldn't stop it. You did it, Reeves whispered. Emily, you landed a passenger jet. For a moment, the cabin was eerily silent. Passengers sat frozen, as if afraid to believe it was real. Then a sound rose soft at first, then swelling. Applause, cheers, sobs of relief. Strangers clutching each other, crying, laughing. In row 14, Emily's mother wept openly, her face buried in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes found the cockpit door. She whispered, "That's my daughter." Emily's own tears blurred the glowing runway lights. She couldn't move. Her hands still clutched the yoke, fingers numb. The radio crackled. Jack, the controller who had stayed with her since the beginning, spoke through tears of his own. "Emily, you brought them home. You brought all of them home." She tried to answer, but only a broken sob escaped. The flight attendants burst into the cockpit, their faces streaked with tears, their voices trembling with awe. "You did it, Emily. You really did it." The unconscious pilots still lay slumped in their seats, breathing shallowly. But the machine they'd once commanded was safe, parked gently on solid ground, because a teenager had stepped up when no one else could. Emily finally let go of the yoke. Her fingers ached, stiff and cramped. She pressed her trembling hands against her face, sobbing openly now, the weight of what she had carried crashing down all at once. Captain Reeves' voice came through the headset one last time. It was thick with emotion. "Emily, remember this day. Remember what you're capable of. You've done something extraordinary." Her chest heaved with uneven breaths. I was so scared," she whispered. "Every pilot is," Reeves said gently. "The difference is, you didn't let fear stop you. That's what makes you a pilot." The ground crew's vehicles rushed out to meet them, flashing lights cutting through the night. Fire trucks, ambulances, airport vans. Figures in reflective vests pointed and shouted, their movements frantic yet relieved. Emily leaned back in the seat, utterly drained. She had no energy left. Her eyes fluttered shut. For the first time since the nightmare began, she let herself rest. Behind her, the passengers were still cheering, still crying, still holding each other. They would go home. They would hug loved ones again. They would live. And though she was only 16, Emily had given them that. The girl who had boarded as just another passenger now sat in the captain's seat, the echo of applause and gratitude forever carved into her memory. The flight was over, but Emily's story had only just begun. The engines wound down to silence, leaving only the muffled sobs and cheers from the cabin. Emily sat frozen in the captain's seat, her trembling hands still hovering near the controls, as if letting go meant everything would unravel. The jet was still, the ground steady beneath it, yet her body hummed with the vibration of adrenaline. The cockpit door creaked open. A flight attendant slipped inside, her eyes red and cheeks wet with tears. She crouched beside Emily, her voice breaking. "It's over, sweetheart. You did it. We're safe." Emily blinked through her exhaustion. The words felt distant, like she was hearing them underwater. Safe. Was that possible? She turned her head toward the windshield. The runway lights glowed steady. Emergency vehicles swarmed the tarmac, their flashing beacons painting the night in red and blue. Firefighters, paramedics, ground crew all rushing toward her plane. The attendant squeezed her arm gently. "They're here for you." Emily couldn't speak. Her throat was raw, her chest heavy. The intercom buzzed as the head flight attendant announced to the cabin, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the ground. Thanks to Emily, our youngest and bravest pilot tonight, we are alive." The plane erupted. Applause thundered, louder than any turbulence, echoing down the aisle. Passengers shouted her name, some crying, others laughing through tears. In row 14, her mother pressed both hands to her face and sobbed uncontrollably, whispering between gasps, "My baby. My brave girl." The cockpit phone rang sharply, startling Emily. The flight attendant picked it up, listened, then turned to her with wide eyes. "It's ground control. They want to speak with you." Emily hesitated, then slowly took the receiver. Her hands still shook so badly she nearly dropped it. "Emily?" The voice was Jack, the controller who had never left her side. His own voice cracked with emotion. "You are the bravest person I've ever guided. Every one of us here is standing and clapping for you. You brought them all home." Her lips parted, but no words came. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you for not leaving me." There was a pause. Then, "The world is going to know your name, Emily. But tonight, just breathe. You're safe now." Safe. The word hit harder this time. Her chest loosened, her eyes burning as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. The paramedics entered the cockpit, moving swiftly to the unconscious pilots. Emily shrank back, her exhaustion making her small, almost childlike. But every paramedic who passed paused just long enough to look her in the eyes, some with tears, others with awe. One murmured softly, "Hero," before hurrying out with medical gear. Emily flinched at the word, hero? She felt nothing like one. She had been terrified every second, certain she would fail. She had almost lost control, had screamed that she couldn't do it. And yet, here they were, alive. A firefighter leaned in through the cockpit door, grinning despite the sweat on his face. "Kid, you just landed a commercial jet. People train for years to do what you did. You're something else." Her mother burst into the cockpit moments later, pushing past attendants and medics. "Emily," she cried, collapsing against her daughter, wrapping her in desperate arms. "I thought I lost you. I thought—" Her voice broke into sobs. Emily buried her face in her mother's shoulder. For the first time since the crisis began, she let herself collapse completely. She wept, shaking violently, the weight of the night pouring out in sobs. Her mother stroked her hair, whispering over and over, "It's okay, baby. It's okay. I'm here. You're safe." The passengers filed off the plane in waves, many pausing by the cockpit door to catch a glimpse of the teenager who had saved them. Some pressed their hands to their hearts. Others whispered thanks. A few knelt briefly, crossing themselves in reverence. By the time Emily finally stepped out of the jet, escorted by paramedics and her mother, the tarmac was lined with cameras. Word had spread already within minutes. The story of a 16-year-old landing a passenger jet had exploded across airwaves. Reporters shouted her name. Photographers blinded her with flashes. Emily winced, clinging to her mother's arm. The chaos felt unbearable after the fragile quiet of the cockpit. "Give her space." One paramedic barked, shielding Emily from the cameras. But microphones still thrust forward, voices calling, "How did you do it, Emily? Were you scared? Do you want to be a pilot when you grow up?" She kept her head down, overwhelmed. Her only answer was to clutch her mother tighter. Inside the terminal, the crowd was no less intense. Families reunited in tears, embracing loved ones they had thought they would never see again. Passengers pointed at Emily, some reaching out just to brush her hand as though to prove she was real. The airline's CEO rushed forward, flanked by officials. "Emily," he said, shaking her trembling hand with both of his, "on behalf of everyone here and everywhere, thank you. You've accomplished the impossible tonight." But Emily only nodded weakly. Her exhaustion was too deep for speeches. News networks replayed her story on every channel. 16-year-old saves 148 lives, flashed across screens worldwide. Photos of her tear-streaked face leaving the cockpit spread like wildfire. Social media exploded #Emily, the pilot trending in dozens of countries. Yet Emily, in the quiet of a hospital room hours later, wanted none of it. She sat wrapped in a blanket, 4 in her arm, her mother dozing beside her chair. Outside the window, dawn painted the sky in pale orange and pink. She replayed it all in her head, the pilot collapsing, the terror in the cabin, the cockpit's endless switches, the screams, the runway rushing up. And her father's voice, always there in memory. "Trust the horizon. It never lies." Her chest ached with both grief and gratitude. He hadn't been there, but in a way, he had guided her every second. A soft knock broke her thoughts. Jack, the air traffic controller, stepped into the room. His face was lined with fatigue, his eyes heavy, but his smile was gentle. "I had to meet you in person," he said softly. "You were extraordinary up there. Do you know how rare it is for even trained pilots to handle what you did?" Emily looked down at her hands. They were still trembling faintly. "I wasn't extraordinary. I was terrified." I almost gave up. Jack shook his head. That's what makes it extraordinary. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Emily. It's acting despite it. That's what you did. She swallowed, tears stinging again. I didn't want anyone to die. And because of you, Jack said gently. No one did. Silence filled the room, heavy yet peaceful. Emily leaned back, letting the dawn's light spill over her. For the first time since it began, she let herself believe it was over, that the nightmare was behind her. She didn't know what the future held. Maybe the world would expect her to become a pilot. Maybe books would be written, movies made. But for Emily, none of that mattered now. What mattered was that a 16-year-old girl had faced the unthinkable and had not backed down. And in the quiet morning light, Emily whispered to herself, voice soft but steady, I'm still here.